Hey, happy Friday. Happy Friday. I made that last night. What do folks think about my new countdown? I have a soft spot for just odd air horn noises. I think one time for a lark, I threw some in a video. People were like, "What the heck is with all the air horn noises?" Well, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the air horn. Happy Friday. Hey Perkins, thanks for hopping in there. I've been wanting to do some kind of countdown timer just to give myself a little bit extra buffer to check things out and do that. I finally found a really easy tutorial for Adobe Premiere, so I threw it together. Let's see, programming notes. I've only got one, but it's a big one, so to speak. The first, I don't know how many streams each one of these Appendix N Book Club videos will be, but we're going to be going over it. I haven't scheduled it yet, but I'm going to do it this afternoon for Monday. So Monday, we will be looking at Turgeon of Mir from Jack Vance's Dying Earth collection. So finish reading that up if you haven't read it yet. Get to reading. It's not that long. You've had a month if you've been following this saga since the beginning, but Monday we're finally going to talk about it. So get that done. That's all I've got. Let's get to Reddit. For this is the OSR Reddit Roundup number 33, recorded on February 11, 2022, Year of the Tiger. I'll give it this. I didn't load it up that long ago, but I'll give it another refresh just to see on the hot tab, as is our usual. Perkins said, I received a jury duty summons for today. Then the court said, and not you today. So I had the day off work and the court doesn't need me. Surprise. Well, hey, cool. Well, glad you could spend your day off at least for an hour or so hanging out. Yeah, that's the best, right? And you do your civic duty and then they say, nah, we don't need you. And then you just get to go home. It's your reward for not trying to shirk. Question. Have I reviewed or read Into the Odd? No, it's on my list. There's a list of kind of some of the more, I won't say famous, but maybe well thought of. I've flipped through Into the Odd, but I have not done an official reading and review. It's kind of on my list along with, is it Into the Odd? That's Electric Bastion Land. I actually did play in a very short, unfortunately incomplete campaign that was using Into the Odd / Electric Bastion Land rules. So I have a little bit of experience, but I do want to do an official reading, but I haven't done it yet. Ian says, Happy Friday. Happy Friday, Ian. Glad you could make it. All right, so what do we got here? Ooh, right off the bat. Walking Holiday. Make travel more cozy and fun. Let's see, is this something we can actually read, or is it going to be something that we have to go to? Where is this link taking us? All right, it's on itch. It's from related to the Rise Up Comus blog, which you have read stuff on before. Let me give it an upvote. We'll read the summary, and then we'll see if there's enough meat. He does have some community copies. I hate to take them because I would rather folks get them in the community and not me swipe one to give it a read. We'll see. This is posted 4 hours ago, so maybe the community copies are all dried up. I don't know. We'll see. The text that they're sharing on Reddit says, often travel boils down to this procedure. The players decide to go on a journey. The referee asks for a skill check. Based on the skill check, the PCs must spend some resource or lose HP. Travel continues. I find this so very boring. Walking Holiday is a game supplement that makes traveling actually fun by infusing interesting choices into the journey. The game includes procedures for point crawling, map making by dropping dice and drawing landmarks, collaborative rumor generation about the map's contents, dozens of example encounters and strange landmarks, and finally an optimized PDF with links and bookmarks, as well as layers that can be turned off for printing purposes. Have a nice trip. Walking Holiday is designed for use with Underhill by Water, a game about halflings who don't want no adventures. Thank you. The example encounters are NPCs, and NPCs are intended to provide a cozy slice of life experience. Even so, the procedures, advice, and game theory included are universally applicable. Use Walking Holiday to improve your journeys for any game where travel is featured. And then they've added 30 community copies. We'll take a look. I will post a link to it in the chat. I believe I might have seen one of their blog posts at the Rise Up Comus blog. I think we might even have looked at it on an earlier chat about this very subject. And it seems like he took maybe some of what was in the blog post I don't think that went in. Nope, it didn't. I don't know where I was typing, but it wasn't going into the chat like I had anticipated. Let's see. Perkins says, I'm reading the OSR books like White Hack, Black Hack, Lavender Hack, and Into the Odd. Mostly I'm looking for ways to improve my DM skills while not getting to play much. I hear you. That is a struggle. But I think those are all good books. Lavender Hack has also been on my list a lot. I did do one video on the Black Hack, but I concentrated on their, it was kind of their hex crawl, their procedural hex sort of wilderness generation materials. I should go back and look at it again. I also have a copy of the White Hack. I think I have one of the hardcover books. Yeah, I mean, I usually find, and which is one thing I enjoy about doing all the read-throughs and everything, is even if I don't intend to use the system, I find that there's usually either it makes me think, which is good, it kind of gives me food for thought or inspiration, and then sometimes I'll also find, or even I would say most of the time, find something, a concept, a mechanic, just an interesting way that they put their own twist on something that I appreciate and kind of pick up for later, or try to note for later use. So Walking Holiday is $6 at Itch. I think it's basically the same concept. Yep, all the community copies are claimed, which is good because, like I said, I hate to take one. I'd rather somebody get it than me. I can, I think we follow each other on Twitter. So maybe I can get a full copy. I'll take a look at some of these sample pages, like this one, for drawing a map. To create a map, the GM should follow these steps. 1, take a sheet of paper. 2, determine your landmarks by rolling a d4, a d6, a d8, and a d12, and a d20 on your paper. If any fall up, pick them up and roll again. Take a picture. Trace a penny anywhere on it. This is your home village. Label your village. Consult the landmarks table on the following page. Draw your landmarks on your map. If you have specific places that you know your players need to go, like a neighboring village, the GM should trace a penny and add those in. I don't know why a penny did this. Brian Smith says, hey, they kind of did this and generated a little region. Awesome. Brian Smith, what did you use different dice shapes or sizes? And if so, what did each one encompass? Because it looks like on this sample page, we don't get what those mean. And then you basically work for your photo, working from the photo you took, draw your landmarks on your map. Alternatively, you can use map creation software or Hexed resources. I am not a good artist, but I have drawn a map as an example. Drawing can be fun even if you're not good at it. Keep generating and drawing landmarks until you're happy with your map. This book is mostly concerned with creating spaces between halfling villages inside the Vale. If you go beyond the hedge, you'll want to adapt these rules to make stranger and more dangerous places. Let's draw in the map. I guess we could just use the arrows. Okay, here we have, is this a sample area? It's marked number 1, tributary. The water flows swiftly here, foaming merrily over rocks and swirling into deeper pools. A single bridge arches over the clear, cold water. The bridge is made of stacked river stones without mortar, obviously ancient but still in excellent repair. The bridge is guarded by a fairy knight named Sir Tatterdemalion, who challenges any armed creature who passes but will allow the unarmed to pass unmolested. And then we have some notes. Sir Tatterdemalion is a fairy who has been bound by an oath to guard the bridge. He's really gotten into this role. If you defeat Sir Tatterdemalion in a duel, he will not only grant you passage, but gift you a gossamer dagger. This dagger is only about 6 inches long, but can cut through almost anything. Roll a d10 whenever you use this dagger. On a 1, the tip breaks off and the magic fails. Personality. Sir Tatterdemalion is extremely cordial and will follow chivalric law to the letter. However, these strictures can often make him cruel. If you insult or belittle him, or a lady within his hearing, he will magically compel you to duel him. Luck check to try and escape. You can also manipulate him into doing what you want by framing certain courses of action as quote-unquote good form. And then some moves. Gossamer Arms and Armor. Sir Tatterdemalion wears armor made out of autumn leaves, cobwebs, and misty mornings. This provides him protection equivalent to chainmail. His sword is named Early Frost. At his command, any wounds dealt by Early Frost are instantly healed. And then Ironbane. As a fairy, he cannot lift an item made of iron or cross an unbroken line of iron. Perkins says the dice drop map method is really fun, especially when facing a blank page. Yep, it can be. Absolutely. Let's see. And Brian Smith says, I used each die size to represent a scale of something. Like I'd roll d6s to determine elevation. 1 low, 6 high. Did that to determine safety threat of an area, wet dryness of an area, remote slash populated, etc. That's cool. I like it. All right, I really like this example. I like the bridge. I like the fact that we get a little bit about the bridge. I like the fact that we get some kind of obstacle. It doesn't. I mean, I don't think that everything necessarily needs to have an obstacle, but in this case, we have, say, it might be an obstacle, a point of interest, an NPC. In this case, it's kind of all the above. The bridge itself is a point of interest. The Fairy Knight is definitely an obstacle, but also an interesting NPC. And then, in part of that interest, I like the fairy role that I like the role that this Fairy Knight has taken on, and the things about it are cool. We have more notes. Oh, this is maybe for something else. So this is, I guess, is just a random page, part of an old mine. We get some extra notes and the picture of an old mushroom man called Grandpa Shroom, an old, cold, sentient mold. Ha ha ha, nice rhymes. Grandpa Shroom is a crabby old mushroom man who wishes everybody would go away and leave him alone. Personality, such an old cranky man. Get off my lawn! No, you can't have your frisbee back. Back in my day, children had respect for their elders. This reminds me of one time at Cracker Barrel. Considers the entire mine his property, and is impotently furious about any trespassers. Frequently loses his train of thought and falls asleep. And then his moves. Regeneration. Grandpa Shroom can regrow his body if there's even a single spore left over. This is how he keeps getting the better of Mammy. Animate shrooms. Grandpa Shroom can wake up other mushrooms and turn them into shroomlings. Shroomlings are silly and sweet. Doing this infuriates Grandpa Shroom, who only wants to be left alone. So then why would he do it? I don't know. Ryan Smith says, get off my rotting log. Exactly. Let's see. So these are cool. I'm digging it. This one is a little bit more tongue-in-cheek than the other one. I guess stylistically, I prefer the other one that's not doing kind of breaking fourth wall with calls to frisbees and cracker bargle. But it's fun. I guess there's no real stat blocks for these. I don't think there was a stat block for the Fairy Knight, so you would just have to do that as you wish. Maybe for this particular game, it doesn't matter. But yeah, Perkins, I agree with you. Love the character. Absolutely. A funny. I like the fact that he's someone, I think a lot of games would turn that into some kind of combat encounter, that he's massively powerful or whatever. This guy, no, he's not. He's a goof. He's a goof who's going to kind of make himself a bit of a nuisance. And those are fun characters to play. If anything, I feel like GMs make too many people goofs and nuisances. But when they have good characters and they kind of fit a locale, it makes sense. And I think that one, in some kind of mining domain, would make sense. Now we get a sample wandering encounter table. 1, curiosities, murmuration. A murmuration of starlings churns overhead, filling the air with their shrill cries and darkening the sky. They twist like a strange cloud, then fly out of sight. I guess these are different categories. So murmuration was a curiosity. The next one's also a curiosity. Hedgers. A family of hedgehogs, a mother and 3 little hoglets, trundles across your path. They see you, squeak, and hurry along. Then another curiosity, an old campfire. Someone camped here recently. The ashes are cool, but they were definitely here this morning. And then another curiosity, the last of the curiosities, a fox screams. Nearby, a fox screams. The sound is chilling. Have you ever heard a fox scream? It sounds like a woman screaming. PCs might well choose to investigate if they don't recognize this sound. Brian Smith says a real cranky Kong type. Yep, exactly. I'm going to do a quick diversion here just to tell a funny story. I was up in the country. It's not really the country, in kind of a smaller town. I was walking to get something in the afternoon. I was walking from the house, kind of through the neighborhood towards the main strip. And at some point, just the way I tend to walk, there are multiple ways from getting from A to B, but I tend to walk and it goes across. There's a river that bisects the town, and the house is on one side of the river, and then kind of the main strip is on the other side of the river. And there are a couple of streets that have just kind of tiny little bridges that cross over the water. And I'm since there are only a couple of these roads that go across, there's usually a couple of them that I go across, mainly one of them. I had my phone in my pocket. I was listening to something in my headphones. I'm walking along. I'm not even really looking up because I know the path by heart. I'm in my own space, but I'm getting towards the river and I kind of look up, and this is maybe about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So not super early, not super late at night. This was during the summertime, so the sun was still out. Also, 5 o'clock. It's a fairly busy time of day. Anyway, I look up and I'm coming up where I'm maybe a half a block. There's a street, and then there's the road with the bridges on. And this bridge is actually closed to cars because I think they're going to repaint it or redo it or do something. It's still fine to walk across, but it's closed off to cars. I see coming up the other side on the sidewalk facing me, having just crossed over the river, and keeping in mind that the main road that runs through the town is on the other side of that river. You really can't get anywhere without there's nothing where this place could have come from. It had to have crossed the main drag at 5 p.m. So the heart of rush hour is a fox. And this fox has a chicken in its mouth, or a rooster. It might have been a rooster in its mouth. It stops, it looks at me. I am looking at it, and I'm just sort of stunned because, granted, we're in the kind of smallish town, kind of in the country, but I'm in kind of the downtown of this small town area. And the last thing I expected to see coming from even more of the downtown area that I'm currently in is a fox with a chicken in its mouth. And given that the downtown area, probably there's no one has a chicken coop right there, that they would have had to come some distance the other side to where they found this chicken, and then had already walked it some distance to where I was. I'm just kind of stunned. And I'm looking at it, and I don't even know what to do. And I didn't even think about getting out my phone. This is a prime, if this was something really paranormal, like the why didn't you get a picture of Bigfoot kind of moment, because I'm just kind of looking at it. And then it turned and started walking down one of these, the last lane that was between where I was and the bridge. Just walking down it. No, not in a hurry, not in a rush. In fact, it crossed over, got on the sidewalk, even though there are no cars on the road, walking along as if it had come home from the farmer's market, as if it was on his way home, 5 o'clock, got off work, picked up a meal, and was headed home. And I actually followed it up that street for a little bit, but it was too far away for me to get a good picture with my iPhone. So by that time, I'd kind of given up. I'd fumbled around with it, couldn't get a good picture, and then it was walking away from me. I tried to follow it for a while. I ended up letting it go. But it's just one of those weird, almost it's like one of those things, like kind of an apocalyptic moment in a sense, that this was this past year. So kind of not the whole heights of COVID, but for some reason I did think about that part in 12 Monkeys where they look up and, on the top of the library is a live lion roaring, signifying, nature is taking over again. But it was just kind of one of those weird moments where it should be fairly busy out. It's a small town, so even fairly busy, it's kind of quiet. But there's this fox paying no mind to me at all. It didn't look back at me once. I'm no threat to the fox anyway, but it didn't even look at me twice. Like, it knew, like, you're not catching up to me, big boy. And I'm just going home with my dinner. Funny moment. Didn't scream though. Didn't put down the chicken and scream. I have no idea where it got the chicken from. And I'm fascinated by the fact of how long that fox had to go through fairly for a town, kind of dense, the dense residential area in town. Funny thing. Brian Smith says, the classic fox can tot on the riverbank riddle. Indeed. No screaming, though. Anyway, funny story I thought I would share. Back to this. We have a different category of events. Bad weather. The weather takes a turn for the worse. Another traveling event, falling star. You see a star fall. It goes streaking through the sky towards the horizon. You see a brief light as it impacts, and the glow just past the next landmark. PCs can search for the star. This is a travel action that has a 1 in 6 chance of success. If they find it, the party gets one wish, but everybody that finds it must agree to the wish. The star brooks no dissent. We have another travel event, honey trap. The halflings smell where they see it, a hole in a nearby tree dripping with honey. However, the air swarms with bees buzzing back and forth to the tree. If any halfling is allergic, this includes bees. How will the PCs get that sweet honey? I don't know. And then finally, another travel event, silverfish. A 3-foot-long silverfish has crawled into an adventurer's pack unbeknownst to them. Secretly replace ration with silverfish next time they use an item from there, and then So I'm guessing there's probably more to this table, we don't get how many there are, but this was 8. And that's pretty gross if there's going to be a giant kind of cockroach in your pack. Brian Smith says, urban animal sightings are so surreal. I came around a corner walking my dog, and there was a big old turkey right there on the sidewalk, and it flew up in the branch like 10 feet above us. Yeah, I mean, this was in the country, and I later talked to kind of the neighbor who lives across the street, and they mentioned that someone's got kind of an old barn. And even though this is sort of a, we're out in the country, but it's kind of a suburban kind of thing. So it's not like there are miles between homes. It's more, your average. I mean, granted, the nearest city is either New York, which is 2 to 3 hours, or 2 to 4 hours away, and Boston, which is basically 2 to 4 hours in the other direction. But it's not the super. This part of the town is not a super countryside-y. But yeah, it's definitely had a weird thing to it. Yeah, I saw a whole bunch of turkeys there one time only. Haven't seen them again, and I'm always wondering when I'm going to see turkeys again. But yeah, one thing that was funny was my wife and I, we were going on a trip, and we had done something where we had booked a ticket for an air. You're trying to get the best price on air travel, and this was something where it was just leaving really early in the morning. Not really early, but you had to get to the airport and all that stuff. It might have been an international flight, so I think we might have even wanted to leave super early. I think in any case, it was maybe 5:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and we're waiting outside our building for the car service to come. When you live in a place like New York and I don't know if other cities, we didn't have a car at that time. We were kind of sharing a car, but we didn't really have the car with us at that point. And usually with kind of parking prices, I don't know. I don't know anybody, even folks who own a car, who drive and leave their car in the lots. You just take a car service, which is kind of a phone in. It's not a taxi cab in the sense you can't hail them from the corner, but you can call them. Anyway, we're waiting for the car service. And then a big possum just kind of wanders down the street, got into the bushes. It was kind of rooting around as we're waiting. And we're in Brooklyn, but we are very near to a fairly large park. So there was that, but it was kind of funny seeing a big possum. We also had raccoons living in the kind of walk up next to our building that we used to see at night. And boy, you ever hear some raccoons going on? They sound like cats kind of screaming. Talk about screaming. It was one raccoon. We only saw, I think, the mom and then a bunch of the raccoon babies that she was training. And they'd started up at 11 p.m. or so, and they would just be making all kinds of wonderful noises. Well, that was Walking Holiday. It sounds interesting. I like some of the things. You may not be interested in the kind of hobbit focused or halfling focused setting, but I feel like there's a lot of stuff that you could use for own $10. I didn't catch the length of it, but there it is. Posted by Working Boy, who I guess I forget their other identities, but the author of was it Waking Up? Rise Up Comus blog. So there's that. Let's go find something else. Okay, we've got any games that have messed with / replaced HP and AC. I think there's a bunch. Do I own a D30? I used to. I may have one somewhere because I did buy a DC dice set once, just on an urge. How do I handle encounters? Size? I'm not sure. I tend to just use. I basically go by the default thing. You can have, there's sort of the dungeon size, and then there's the wilderness size. I tend to use those, or sometimes I'll roll a die to see kind of, well, how much of it is it? A small party, medium party, large party, and go with there. A couple of ways to skin it, but if I'm in a rush and I haven't really prepped or thought about it enough, I'll just roll the 46 or 3d6, whatever, 3d6 times 10 or whatever, for how many goblins are out in the woods, kind of thing. Okay, looking for players. That's great. Choosing the right map scale for travel. Is this a question? Oh, we'll read the question. That's a big question. Whoops. Don't want to go back. Let's give up a up thumb. This was posted by, choosing the right map scale for travel. Posted by XX Nerd at Heart XX. Their question, situation, problem. I'm moving from 5e to Worlds Without Number now that I found a new group who actually wants to try new things. I made a world and a general map with the tools provided in the book, but when translating it to a hex map, I feel like the scale is off. They're posting a link here. I'll open it in a new tab and then come back to it. This is the Ilium region of Adia, and while I like the scale the way it is, and distance in terms of hexes, I'm having a lot of issues with scaling them to the X mile/grid, and thinking of how I would use it for travel. Since I'm using Worldographer, I expected to make a map and then zoom in with a region map for it, increasing the count of hexes in each child hex. Originally, I considered having these current hexes be 24 miles so that they could be zoomed in by a factor of 4 and give me 6-mile final hexes. But after doing that, the scale of things was completely screwed up. I like where things are now, but increasing the distance that much really screws things up. Now I'm thinking of using that scale map with just 6-mile hexes, but then certain things, like the desert near the center, feel way too small for what they're supposed to be. I guess part of the problem is that I don't know what time scale I want to use for the game. Is traveling 1 hex per day going to drag things out too long, or will it make things in the background actually happen? If I stick to the current size and just call it 24 miles per 1 hex per day, our encounters/discovery is going to feel less interesting since they may happen every other day instead of once every 4 to 6 tiles. Is that tiles, or I think they mean miles of travel? I was really wanting to use the Angry DM's tension system for travel, which I'm not sure what that is, but I'll have to check it out. Dropping 6 d6s into a bowl over the course of a day and rolling when it fills to decide if there's an encounter. And with 1 hex per day travel scale, I just don't see that happening. I want to have 6 slots of travel a day, which just isn't feasible on this scale. I'm thinking of multiplying it by 3 so that it boils down to 2 hexes per day, but again, the wonky scale of things comes into play. I want to print this out and hand them out for notes as they explore, but anything bigger starts to become really restrictive. This is already blown up to a scale which fits across 4 sheets. Anyway, that's my rambling as I dip my toes into OSR. Whew. Let's see. Got a few things in here. Brian Smith says, Iron and Fire Horos. Iron and Feral? Is that fire? Oh, Iron and Fire, exclamation mark. Is that supposed to be, is that Horos or supposed to be Heroes with a typo? I'm not sure. Is a Brazilian dude who has been churning out a bunch of handmade cool stuff lately. Oh, that's cool. Terrence said, only a possum I ever saw wandering out near people are rabid. This one didn't seem to be rabid, but here's the thing. It's 5 o'clock in the morning, still dark, and I live near a big park. I mean, a big park, New York-wise. I think it's the 3rd largest park in New York City, I want to say. Van Cortlandt Park, number 1. Central Park, number 2. And I'm near Prospect Park, which I believe is number 3. And by same designer as Central Park. So it's a really cool park. It's not, they think of park, just a playground and a baseball field. So there's a lot of critters out there. Hawks, we've got hawks around, red-tailed hawks around here. There's definitely raccoons in the park and possums. And then, of course, your squirrels, chipmunks, all that jazz. And lots of different birds, especially during the migratory periods. Brian Smith says, all the way from the OP seems like they want exploration to be very important. Does anybody really care if the desert is too small, if it's just what they want? I just go with it. Yeah, let's look at the map. I have a feeling that you're barking up the correct tree, and that they're looking at that. They're looking at it. I mean, and the other thing is that people forget about is how big a 6-mile hex really is. Like, yeah, it's not huge when you think about, I could just walk across it easily, but it does encompass, 31 point something square miles. So it's not quite as tiny, but I think people tend to take that edge to edge size and say, hey, this is too small, but is it? It's, granted, deserts could be, thousands of miles, but if you probably take a handful of hexes, especially if they're 24 miles, and do the math, and I do not know the math offhand, probably would see that, hey, maybe these are bigger than you think. Okay, so this is the scale that they like, but now they find it's too small. Let me go back. Let's see, right? So the thing is that I think it would be the easiest solution is just 1 hex encompasses multiple of those segments. I think that would be the first thing. Let's see. Oh, Brian, so hold on. On Iron and Fire is the name of the system. Okay. He was in the list from Reddit. The creator's name is Horror. I see. Okay. I'll have to check out Iron and Fire. Okay. No comments yet here. So if I was going to diagnose this a little bit. So say we call it 24 miles. They want to have 24 miles as their scale. Fine. And then you want to do one of those on a day. Also fine. You just break that out into segments. Or yeah, you could drop a larger hex map over the top of the good one too. That's right, Bryce. But you could do that. Keep it as 24 miles. I think the thing is too is Worldographer. What happens is if you're kind of auto populating it and then you zoom in, it does weird things. You kind of fix the zoomed in levels a bit. So if you zoom into one of these, depending on whether you did it yourself or random generated it, you could zoom into kind of this mountains and you'll get all kinds of stuff, and you got to kind of clean it up depending. But yeah, I would just say, look, if you like this at 24, and I was look, if you end up with a map and you like it and you think whatever scale the map is at and you really like it, and you have this mechanic you want to use, and the mechanic says once per hex, say drop a die into a bowl, and then at the end of the day, and so that would say, okay, we want to have 6 hexes a day, but you're like, wait a minute, I have 24-mile hexes, and this is saying drop in 1 per day. So how does that work? Well, just change it. Drop 3 per hex per day, or drop all 6 for 1 hex. Because your party may often, depending on what you're doing, depending on what they're going, not traverse a full hex in a day. What if they go into the hex, do some adventuring, and then do something else? Well, you just figure out, okay, if one 24-mile hex is 6 dice, then just say that takes up 6 segments of travel, each of those being 4 miles. So then every segment in time during the day, you're adding a die to the bowl. And then if they do nothing else at the end of the day, then you've filled up the bowl. If that's the system you want to use, just do it. And if they decide to move partly, then you drop less dice. And that gives you your 1 die per segment of travel. And then each one of those is a quarter of a hex or a sixth of a hex, however you want to do it. If you want to do four travel segments with 6 miles each, however you want to do it. You break it down and you say, okay. And then, and I will use this because when I'm usually doing the travel, I will usually, in my party, as I've mentioned before, they're not traveling super long distances at this point. They're mostly doing sub-hex travel, or maybe, and remember, hexes are GM facing. There's no hexes in the landscape. So one sub-hex travel day could be, if I move the hexes around, they could be crossing over a hex, right? But the actual distances, it's basically within a hex or about a hex or hex and a half, whatever. Within a couple of hexes, depending on how you could take hexes and try to move them around to put everything in 1 hex, whatever. But they're not moving a ton of hexes. And I'm using 6-mile hexes. And I will usually have hey, this is what happens in your morning of travel. And then, almost if I was going to have one of those flow charts, narrate the morning of travel. Well, first of all, I guess behind the scenes, roll to see if there's going to be an encounter today, assuming they don't, for the daytime. And then if there is, when it happens. So, and that'll enter in my narration, but they'll basically be because I do day and night, because I like to have kind of diurnal and nocturnal differences. So I do things a little bit differently. So, okay, for the daytime, if there's an encounter, figure out when it's going to be. There's basically morning, afternoon, and then dusk, that going from, day to night. And then the evening, you sort of have, evening, night, and then, pre-dawn might be. I forget exactly, but I basically have kind of segmented out that way. So figure that part out first. Okay. Let's say no random encounters or no wandering monsters and whatever else. So I will narrate, here's the morning of travel. And in this case, if I was using a system like this, whether, I don't know, was it Slyforish or whoever's system that was, Angry GM system, I'll say, okay, here's your morning, dropping 2 dice in the bowl, whatever it is. Okay, I'll narrate that. Then I'll say, here, you stop, you break for lunch. Is anything going on? Have they got to their destination? Whatever. Okay, no, they keep moving. Then afternoon, I'll run through the afternoon segment. I'm resetting the scene. I'm looking at my map to see kind of where they are as far as terrain, setting the terrain, looking at the weather. This is not taking very long either. I'm not spending hours and hours going over it. It all could be done in just a few minutes of GM time, depending on how the players respond to different things happening. What is the weather stable? Is it changing? Is there something interesting out in the distance? Are they getting near wherever their destination is? Whatever. If not, okay, then here's another segment for, here's the afternoon, drop some more dice into the bowl. Does anything changes? Have they got their destination? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, no. Then go to the evening, which is then is travel. And then at the end of that, kind of camping or how they want to deal with camping. And then I'm dropping more dice in the bowl. Easy. Done. Just take that system and just adapt it. Don't worry so much. If you want to end up with 6 dice in the bowl at the end of a day's travel, then you just make that happen. Make these systems work for you. Bend them to your will. Like, Sauron. Don't put yourself into pretzels trying to make the thing work as written in whatever book or blog you read it in. Just figure out how it works and make it work for you. That's my advice. XX nerd at heart XX. There's no comments yet, so I can't read what other people's suggestions are, but let's see. Do we have some suggestions in the chat? Perkins says, my plan is to keep travel simple and streamlined, civilized, borderlands, wilderness areas with appropriate encounters. Yeah, that's fine. It's really what works for you. Like that we looked at that Rise Up Comus product, and he's making something kind of a lighthearted, slice of life halfling game. Great. Then you just make your appropriate stuff. If you're doing something and that's what you want to have, basically 3 gradations of wilderness. One is civilized, one is kind of borderlands between civilized and wild, and the other is wild. Works perfectly well. Also, I think that's the hard thing when you're a new GM is if you're a practiced GM, if you've been doing this for a while, you have a better idea of kind of how you want your game to be and these kind of elements and then sort of what you want and what you don't want. As a new GM, you don't know any of that. And so you're kind of grabbing stuff from all over. It sounds good to you, but you don't have a real way of assessing the fit for your game, and things sound good, but maybe they're not as great for you as you think, and you don't really know what you want yet. You might think you want a big hex crawl, but then you don't really want a hex crawl, or you might think you want a real narrative game, but you really want a sandbox game, and of course there's your players and all their things coming in. So I feel for the new folks coming in trying to wrap their heads around things, especially if they're going for not the kind of more modern narrative game, which I think in some ways is easier because there is kind of a path that you're creating, and there's a lot of, I don't know, we kind of have a lot of experience with narrative things. So it's very easy to pull from movies, books, shows, and things and put together. Oh, I want to run Lord of the Rings. This is how Lord of the Rings works. So great, I can kind of do that. I feel like I can kind of figure that out. Or I want to run Stranger Things, or I want to run something like that, Game of Thrones with a strong kind of narrative influx. But when you start to pare that stuff away, I want to run an open world. It's kind of like having that blank page problem, but now it's worse than that because it's kind of a blank in your brain problem. Like, oh gosh, how do I? Oh world, like how do I do that? Whereas I think other folks are like, yeah, it's not as hard as you think, but you have to get to that point, and the overwhelmingness of how it seems on the surface can be daunting indeed. Swig of water for the working man. Let's go back and find something else. How am I doing on time? Doing okay. Let's see. What do we got? Oh, here's iron. Oh, I see. This is Iron and Fire. All right, Smith. I now understand why you were pointing that out. I hadn't seen it yet. My eyes had not reached this. Well, let's take a look. First, give an upvote. Oh, my mouse is stuck. There. Stop that. Stop that. Upvote. Submitted by Horoscope Zine. Iron Fire is a minimalist OSR tabletop RPG. You can download and try with your friends. Here's the PDF on itch. All right, let's take a look on itch. I will grab this link and post it in the chat. Iron and Fire. Okay, let's see. It looks like, okay, so it's name your own price. Doesn't have any samples. All right, it's name your own price. I'm going to, for our purposes, I don't want to do it quite yet. All right, I'm just going to, I'll have to come back. I will come back and try to donate, but let's download it so we can take a look because it doesn't have any previews. Is it downloading? Okay, it is downloading. All right. Please support the author. I'm doing this merely so we can look at it, and he does give the option, but of course, I would prefer to just buy it. Shadow Lords, trademarked. Iron and Fire, trademark, is dark fantasy, swords and sorcery, minimalist, OSR, TTRPG, created by Horos, and inspired by old school games like Dungeons and Dragons and fighting fantasy. All right, so that's... Here, let's see. Ryan Smith says, "Dang, he has previews of other things on itch, I believe." It might be a. Maybe I'll drop him a note. He's got a. I mean, he's got a video, but I obviously don't want to play a video. I don't. I suppose I could do. Let me do a reaction video to the Iron and Fire dungeon crawl, but no, I'm not going to do that. Not today. But yeah, unfortunately, there's nothing else to do. Hopefully, it's worthwhile because you guys or folks who come on this later will see this and you'll think, man, Iron and Fire is amazing. So I will buy it. Send the guy $5, or it's name your price. So you could send less if you wish. Oh, it's only a 1-pager. Maybe the $5 just suggested. So this is it, right? I did just want to make sure. Yeah, that is it. All right. So a page of minimalism. Can I zoom out to get the whole thing at once? Can I zoom? Gosh, can you give me a little bit more degradation? All right, let's try this. How the game works. One person plays the role of Game Master, while the others role-play their player characters. The GM proposes challenges to the PCs, and adventures are created together by answering the question, what do you do now? PCs describe their actions, and the GM defines what happens next based upon the following guidelines. Smith says, I guess really minimalist. Yes. So I can see why they didn't put a sample up, because if you put a sample up, that's the whole thing. You might as well just give it away if you're going to do that. Character occupation. Each player describes their PC's occupation. What does your character do for a living? Every time a PC tries to do something related to their occupation, a die is rolled and there will be either a success or a failure. Check skill die below. If a PC tries to do something out of their occupation capabilities, the chance of failure is increased by 1 point at the GM's discretion. I guess we're going to figure out, but let's see. What is a PC's occupation? Okay, so we're getting, I don't think I would call these classes, but you kind of have your occupation, or maybe a profession, that might be another word. Ian says, if you're publishing a 1-page RPG, maybe you should use a quarter of the page to explain how RPGs are. Yeah, it did occur to me that they might have done that, or you know what, there is this space up here. I mean, that you could have thrown it in there, maybe put a little box text, but yeah. Yes, if I had something I would get rid of, if I needed more, but yeah, that would probably be the first thing to go. Character abilities. PCs have skill, stamina, and willpower. Each ability is defined by a die. Players choose between a D4, a D6, and a D8. Once a die is chosen to represent a certain ability, the other dice must be used to define the remaining abilities. Players may choose to use 1d6 on each ability equally instead of the dice suggested above. Okay, I like this. So you have 3 different things and you have 3 different dice. So if you want to be super skillful, you can put the D8 in skill, but then you're going to have a D4 and a D6 you have to add to the other one. So you're going to be weak in one. If you want to be really strong in one, you got to be kind of really weak in the other, and then the one in between, or you can be good across the board. Brian Smith says, the other stuff I've seen from him is minimalist, but has handwritten hex maps and stuff. Well, I think this one's really just the rule set. Maybe what they're doing, which I don't think is a bad idea, is I think one thing that people have been doing a lot lately, and I don't even disagree with it all, is if you're going to go and create your own materials, you might as well attach your own rules to it. That way you don't have to worry about SRDs or other things. You can just have like, hey, I'm creating all my stuff. It's basically OSR compatible, but it's going to be specifically written for my Iron and Fire rule set. Excuse me. That way, as a creator, I don't have to deal with other people and write this or that. I can just say, hey, you know what? Here's the rules. You can use it with whatever anyway, and you probably are, but if you need some mechanics to go along with it, at your core, use mine. It totally makes sense to me. And for this, you could put in a picture or something, but is it going to add, would an image add anything to this other than just adding a page to it? I mean, I think the thing is that's kind of fascinating, other than, hey, maybe this was something they just wanted to do. Like, I want to make a 1-pager and I'm doing it, is if it is just digital, Like, who cares about the page count, really? Not that you should make, a million pages if you don't have to, but what's the difference between 1 page and 5 pages? When you get into printed stuff, it makes more sense because when different booklet sizes and everything, they have kind of page counts you have to reach for the printing. And sometimes you might have, okay, if it's 48 pages, it's this price. But if I go over, then I have to jump to 60 pages and it's a whole other price. So I really need to get it to 48 pages. Or on some of the ones where you have a concept, like I want to make one of those, I think we looked at it, one where you fold it all up and you make a physical book out of a single page, something like that, then you have a reason to. But this is just 1 page. So you could have made it 2 pages. It's more of it seems like, even though they don't state it, there must have been just a design goal to make it 1 page for 1 page's sake. So we have our character abilities. Now we have a thing. Remember, the following guidelines are just suggestions. You can adapt or modify them as you please. So this section, it is well intended. That might be actually number 1 that I would get rid of. And then number 2, how the game works. Or I don't know. It's kind of 1 and 1A. They're both things that I would definitely delete to make room for other stuff if I needed to. Skill die. If a PC has a warrior occupation, they can use the skill die to attack opponents. Likewise, wizards can use the skill die to cast spells, and rogues can pick locks by doing the same. Roll your skill die. If the result is 1 or 2, there is a failure. At the GM's discretion, something bad or unexpected occurs after a failure. A success means the action happens as desired by the PC. So you have, let's see, on the D6, you've got a 30% chance or 33% chance of failure. Round to 34 if you wish. On a D8, you've got a 25% chance of failure, but on the D4, a 50% chance of failure. So you're the better you are, the better things you pick, you're definitely increasing your chances. And it seems like the world doesn't really impact this. We're not taking into account anything about what you're doing at 2. You're punching a dragon is the same as punching a goblin. Seems like, anyway. Getting hurt. Each PC has 3 hit points. If attacked or wounded, a PC loses 1 hit point. At the GM's discretion, a huge creature or a powerful spell can cause more damage. Well, that's definitely, if you're using vanilla OSR monsters, that hurts because, when some of those creatures, not even powerful ones, have 3 attacks, you can go down fast. But then again, at first level PC can go down fast regardless of the system. So maybe it doesn't really make a difference. Stamina. Whenever a PC loses all hit points, they roll their stamina die to remain conscious and alive. Rolling a 1 or 2 means the PC fails and dies. If a PC is bitten by a poisonous creature, the stamina die can be rolled to check if subsequent hit points are lost due to the poison's toxicity. So that you're not saving or dying versus poisons, but I guess they're just hurting you. Rolling 1 or 2 means the PC fails and dies. So not a bad thing to put a high die in stamina at all. Gosh, it's interesting because it definitely leaves you with some real tough questions. So if you are, let's see what willpower does first. Willpower. Whenever a PC is charmed by a spellcaster, they roll their willpower's dice to resist their opponent's mind-controlling powers. 1 or 2 means the PC fails and is under control of its master. PC can successfully accomplish something unrelated to their occupation if they don't fail a willpower roll at the GM's discretion. So I guess it depends how much charm effects you feel like you're going to run into, and also about that doing something unrelated to their occupation. If I had to pick a dump stat of these, and I don't really like the phrase dump stat, but you only have 3 of them, and unless you're going D6 across the board, I kind of think you want to have your D6 or D8 in stamina, regardless of what your skill is. Because, dying is bad, poisons are bad, other things are bad, and that stamina, I think, is going to get rolled a lot. But of course, skill is going to get rolled a lot too. So would you go D8? I just think everyone would end up with D8 skill, D6 stamina, D4 willpower, right? Or if they didn't, just do D6 across the board. Oh, that's it. That's that. Oh, these rules are very easy to get up and running. I think you could take this. I don't know what his plans are with it, obviously, but I think this is something that you could easily take this and say, here's your minimalist set, whap. And now if I wanted to, I could add things on top of it, like if I want to add more of a progression of, we haven't even talked about, there's no even experience here. It's just get in there and go, right? Hey, I want a 1-shot, bam, this would be fine. I think for a 1-shot, this would work really well. Pick your occupation, get your things, go, roll some dice. And then you could easily layer on top of it if you wanted to add progression, if you wanted to add levels or anything, if you wanted to add more disputed skill things, like, hey, I want to differentiate between fighting a goblin and fighting a dragon, you could do that as well. Brian Smith says, reminds me of the skill attribute in Fighting Fantasy type books. Yeah, and I think they mentioned Fighting Fantasy specifically as an inspiration. So there it is. Well, that is Iron and Fire, a dark fantasy minimalist OSR tabletop RPG created by Oros. It is free, pay what you want at itch, so pay what you want. Give it a go. I mean, if it's your thing, let me see. Give that an upvote. I think I can get one more in here. I think time is all right. Let's go back. Let's see if we can find one more. We've released the preview Time Priest class for Planar Compass 3. I don't know what that is. Is this something that I have to go to drive-through to do? Because I'm loath to do that. Let me go into the comments just to take a peek. Is there something I can get? Okay, well, I'll upvote it. Time priests are devotees of Ordo, the quasi-sentient plane of law and time. They practice divine chronology to bring their religion out into the multiverse and ensure events flow to their inevitable ordained conclusion, the rebirth of Ordo as an again living god. You can get that on drive-thru. I'm going to leave it alone for now, but maybe I'll check it out later. More tables, more gonzo. Well, I'm not a super gonzo guy, but I'll give it a look. First, an upvote. I do like this layout. This is a D20 table with multiple columns. The first two columns are, it's almost like you're filling out a Mad Libs, if you're familiar with Mad Libs. You know, so we're talking about A or N blank, which you're going to roll 2 times. One first for an adjective and then one for a place. Then inhabited with, and then roll on the third column. And for inhabited with, you know, insert noun in that. And then finally, ruled by, insert government type there. Brian Smith says, ooh, nice. Dig me a good RPG Mad Lib. Yep. And then Perkins says, Planar Compass looks very cool. I joined the Kickstarter at $45 to get all 3 issues. Oh, cool. Perkins also says, the Time Priest is cool. Dealing with time travel or skipping seems like a hard thing to play at the table. Yes, could be. I agree with you. But, hey, if they're able to do it, more power to them. Let's see what kind of stuff we get from this table. Let me see. I'm going to go to my good old Dice Maiden, Dice Bot. Do it in my DM screen so the players on my channel don't think I'm weirdly rolling dice at an odd hour. I'm just going to roll, what is it? It's 4d20 basically, right? I got 16, 13, 10, and 1. 16, 13, 10, and 1. So 16 is, we have a sentient pilgrimage site inhabited with imaginary people ruled by a caste system. That was a sentient pilgrimage site inhabited with, inhabited with imaginary people ruled by a caste system. I mean, it's definitely kind of gonzo, but I could make that make sense. I mean, I have a very kind of grounded sort of game, but I could definitely do something with that. The imaginary people, I would reimagine somewhat. But I like the caste system. The sentient pilgrimage site, I feel like you could have some sort of, when you start working with mystical things like a place of pilgrimage where a lot of spiritual energy has been deposited and consumed, absorbed over a lot of time, I could see some kind of weird sentience developing. Like I said, imaginary people, I'd have to figure out what that means exactly. But maybe the caste system is that this imaginary thing, and maybe it's there's that kind of collective unconscious of all the people who used to come to this pilgrimage site, and they're still in some kind of illusory, maybe the place itself, through its sentience, is generating this past, this kind of imaginary version of itself. Like it remembers, If this, let's say this was a place that was abandoned ages ago, but it remembers. It's grown sentient because of all the people that came and visited it when it was a thing. It's not now, but it was, and it remembers. And part of that, it's kind of weird quasi existence life that it has is it projects into the world its imaginings of how it was and people are visiting it. So you still have people, these images of people doing these things. And of course, I'm going to say it was a religious site, and therefore it had sort of a caste system of how it worked. So that if you came to visit, you would see these illusionary things all moving and living and inhabiting, living in and working their days, and being governed by this caste system. But it's all this projection of the sentient pilgrimage site itself. Hey, Direct Sun. Bam, Direct Sun got pretty much on the same wavelength I was. The place is sentient, had created imaginary people to inhabit it, complete with caste system. Yeah, pretty much. I think you could do something with that. I think, is it gonzo? I guess, I think it's something that you could, with all these things, it's all about how you interpret it. Could you interpret it in a very gonzo sense? Sure. But you don't have to. Let me do one more here. Let's 4D20. All right, 1812-7-3. 18, starved mining community inhabited with fiends and devils, ruled by a coven of witches. Wow. All right. A starved mining community inhabited with fiends and devils, ruled by a coven of witches. I think the interesting thing there is how did this coven of witches get over on the fiends and devils? So we've got a starved mining community, and we can look at starved. Is it just physically, right? They're starved. They can't get resources. They don't have food. Maybe. But if the mine is being worked by fiends and devils, maybe that's not what they're starved of. We can think about, well, what are the things that fiends and devils need? What do they feed on that they could be starved of? And then you can also think of, was a coven of witches able to, devils in particular, and we could, I don't know, fiends, are they also, we're thinking of devils, are they more on the demon side? I can't remember because it's where they were thinking, but whatever, these infernal forces, maybe they were tricked. Maybe the witches got over on them. Maybe maybe the witches made a deal with somebody else and got these a higher infernal force and got these things working for them and have them basically working the mines. What are they mining? Who knows? But they're in there slaving away and they're starved of something. It's an interesting thing to think about. Well, I don't imagine fiends and devils really need to eat food, but maybe they need to do other things. Or they I don't know if they weaken, or maybe they grow even more sort of wild and chaotic. I don't know. But that's cool. I could make that work. I can make that work in my game. Got to think it through a little bit. Direction says, I'd make the demons only some of the inhabitants, humans are the rest. Probably there because of the coven. Demons are moving in, taverns overrun. Could be. Yeah. Or you could even have something where there's a mixture of humans and demons or devils, like you say, but the devils are it's kind of a body snatcher thing where they're in amongst the humans, but they're undercover, disguised as humans, and maybe they have monstrous appetites, or they're doing something to starve out the people. Maybe they're working against the witches. It kind of comes down to, well, what is this mine for? What are they trying to mine at? Maybe they're not mining something, but they're in the sense that there is a resource that they are like gold, silver, jewels, but maybe there's something buried down there, and the witches have these people forced to work in the mine to get down to it. Maybe the fiends and devils want it also, and they're trying to sneak in as these mine workers and get it before the witches do, which would be an interesting situation if the party showed up either voluntarily, or it could be something that, hey, they fought some witches and got captured or knocked out or whatever, and they wake up in the mines, and then they could discover that this kind of conspiracy, and who do they help? Or, they got two kind of evils. Which is the worst? Which is the lesser of the two evils? Can they play both sides against the middle and not get caught? That kind of thing. Let's see. Oh, look at that. Direct Sun says their next project might be a sentient dungeon that hates the party and can communicate with the denizens. Not unlike our sentient mining, it's not mining community, our sentient, what was it, pilgrimage site. Very cool. All right, folks. Well, I'm going to close it off here. The roundup is complete. We have squared the circle. We have rounded off the circumference. Another Friday gone. Yes, Direct Sun, please post links in the chat as I'm wrapping up. Anything else anyone wants to say? Folks are pinging Direct Sun to see about more awesome dungeon materials that they're working on. But I got nothing else. That was the OSR Reddit Roundup for Friday, February 11th, 2022, number 33 in the books. I'll give folks a couple more minutes left in chat before I close it off. I'll give another reminder. Because actually, I always feel like my streams end with more people in them than the beginnings. Maybe I need to figure out a better time. Folks, tell me know if I've been going with the 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern as my standard. I'm happy to shift it a little bit forward or later. So let me know if 1:30 or 12:30 would work better. I'm happy to go bounce it around a little earlier. I don't know the sweet spot for when most folks are up and handy. Maybe I should make a poll. Might work. Also, the first stream of the Appendix N book club is Monday for Turgeon of Myr. So get your Turgeon of Myr read. That's all I got, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you watch or listen to this. Thanks, everyone, for coming and hanging out. If you give a thumbs up on your way out, I appreciate it. And if you found yourself in here and you're not subscribed and you thought, boy, this is amazing stuff, go ahead and drop a sub. Helps me out with the algorithms, and then you'll just get notified when all this great stuff happens. Have a great weekend, everybody. Talk to you later. Game on.